The night I found out my wife was cheating on me, New York City looked exactly the same. That was the cruelest part. The yellow taxis still rushed down Lexington Avenue, like they were chasing secrets. Steam still rose from the manholes in ghostly clouds. People still laughed outside restaurants, still held hands under glowing signs, still lived their ordinary lives as if mine had not just cracked down the middle. My name is Daniel Carter. I was 38 years old, married for 12 years, father to an 8-year-old girl named Sophie. And until that night, I truly believed I had built a good life. Not a perfect life. No marriage is perfect, but a good one. Emily and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side, just high enough above the street to hear the city without feeling swallowed by it. She was beautiful in a way that never needed effort. Dark blonde hair, sharp green eyes, the kind of smile that made strangers trust her before she even spoke. She worked as a marketing director for a luxury fashion company in Midtown. I worked as a financial consultant near Bryant Park. We were busy, tired, sometimes distant, but I thought that was just what happened after years of bills, deadlines, school pickups, and real life. I thought love became quieter with time. I did not know that silence could also mean someone had already left you in their heart. That Thursday evening, Emily was supposed to be at a work dinner in Soho. Sophie had fallen asleep early after arguing with me for 20 minutes about why she should be allowed to wear her glitter boots to school the next day. I cleaned the kitchen, folded a basket of laundry, and found Emily's iPad under a stack of magazines on the coffee table. It kept lighting up. Once, twice, then again. At first, I ignored it. I was not the kind of husband who checked devices. I trusted her. Maybe too much. But then the screen lit up with a message preview. Ryan Mitchell. And I stared at the name, feeling nothing at first. Then I read the words. I can still smell your perfume on my shirt. Tonight was torture. I wanted to kiss you in front of everyone. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had misunderstood. Content continues exactly as in the previous message. The last words, I'm Ryan's fiancé. And just like that, the betrayal became bigger than my marriage. Rachel Bennett agreed to meet me the following afternoon at a quiet coffee shop in Tribeca. I almost didn't go. Every instinct told me to stay home with Sophie and pretend my life hadn't exploded. But curiosity is stronger than denial. When I arrived, Rachel was already waiting. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and a half-finished cup of coffee in front of her. You must be Daniel, she said softly. I nodded. And you're Ryan's fiancé. She gave a bitter smile. I guess I was. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she slid her phone across the table. I think you deserve to know who your wife has really been seeing. The screen was filled with photographs. Emily and Ryan walking through Central Park. Emily laughing in a rooftop restaurant. Emily kissing Ryan outside a boutique hotel in Manhattan. Each photo carried a date. The affair had lasted much longer than I imagined. Rachel explained that she had hired a private investigator 2 months earlier after Ryan became distant and secretive. I wanted proof before accusing him, she said. Instead, I discovered both of our lives were built on lies. I stared at the photos until they became impossible to distinguish. I don't understand, I whispered. If they loved each other, why hide it for so long? Rachel sighed. Because Ryan never planned to leave me. That answer hit harder than I expected. According to Rachel, Ryan enjoyed living 2 separate lives. Emily believed he was saving money so they could start over together. Meanwhile, Ryan had been planning an expensive wedding with Rachel in the Hamptons. He told each of us exactly what we wanted to hear. My stomach turned. So Emily wasn't the only one being dishonest. No, Rachel replied. She lied to you. He lied to everyone. She reached into her purse and handed me a sealed envelope. I found this yesterday. Inside was a printed contract. Ryan's company had recently signed a multi-million-dollar deal that included a morality clause. Any public scandal involving Ryan could destroy the agreement and cost him millions of dollars. So that's why they've kept everything secret, I said. Rachel nodded. They weren't protecting your family. They were protecting his money. For the first time since discovering the affair, my anger shifted. I was still furious with Emily, but I also realized she might not know the whole truth herself. Before leaving, Rachel looked directly into my eyes. If you confront Ryan, don't do it alone. Why? Because you're not the first husband who's come looking for answers. Those words stayed with me all the way home. That evening, Emily stood outside my apartment building. She looked like she hadn't slept. Please, she begged, just 5 minutes. I almost walked past her. Then I remembered Sophie. We sat on a bench across the street. Emily cried before she even spoke. I ended it. When? This morning. Because you suddenly felt guilty? She shook her head. No. Because I found out he was engaged. I froze. You didn't know. Her face twisted with humiliation. I thought I was the only one. I believed her. Not because I wanted to forgive her, but because heartbreak has a look you cannot fake. Emily admitted Ryan had promised countless times that he was preparing to leave his relationship. He said he needed time. They always need time, I muttered. She nodded through tears. I know. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered the question I had been expecting. Can you ever forgive me? I looked across the street at the apartment where Sophie was probably coloring at the kitchen table. I don't know. It was the most honest answer I could give. As Emily stood to leave, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. A deep male voice spoke calmly. Mr. Carter? Who's this? My name is Ryan Mitchell. My grip tightened around the phone. I think we should meet. I have nothing to say to you. You will after you hear what your wife hasn't told you. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. Emily's face had turned pale. What did he say? I looked at her. He claims you're still hiding something from me. For the second time in 2 days, I realized the truth was still incomplete. I didn't sleep that night. Ryan Mitchell's words echoed in my mind over and over. You will after you hear what your wife hasn't told you. What could possibly be worse than discovering my wife had spent nearly a year living a double life? The next morning, I dropped Sophie off at school. She hugged me a little longer than usual. Daddy? Yeah? Are you and Mommy still mad at each other? I forced a smile. We're trying to figure some things out. She nodded quietly before running toward the entrance. Watching her disappear through those doors broke my heart. She deserved parents who knew how to protect her from pain. Instead, she had us. At exactly 2 o'clock, I arrived at the location Ryan had texted me, a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson River. He was already sitting inside. Ryan Mitchell looked exactly like the kind of man magazines put on their covers. Expensive navy suit, perfect haircut, confident smile. I hated him before he even stood up. Daniel, don't pretend we're friends. He accepted the insult without reacting. Sit down. This won't take long. I hope it doesn't. For several seconds, neither of us touched the menus. Finally, Ryan slid a brown envelope across the table. Open it. Inside were printed bank statements, receipts, wire transfers, luxury hotel invoices, jewelry purchases. None of them were in Emily's name. What am I looking at? My mistakes. I frowned. Ryan leaned forward. I lied to Emily. I already know that. No, you don't know everything. He admitted that from the beginning, he had never intended to leave Rachel. Emily had believed every promise, every excuse, every delayed plan. He had manipulated her because she made him feel admired. It was selfish, he admitted, But why tell me now? His expression changed. Because someone is trying to destroy both of us. I laughed. You did that yourselves. I mean someone else. He handed me another document. Private photographs. Pictures of Emily. Pictures of me walking Sophie to school. Even photos of Rachel leaving her apartment. Someone had been watching all of us. My pulse quickened. Who took these? I don't know. When did you get them? Yesterday. Attached was a typed note. I know everything. Pay $500,000 within 7 days, or your families, your employers, and every major news outlet will receive the evidence. Blackmail. I looked back at Ryan. You expect me to help you? I expect you to protect your daughter. That sentence landed harder than anything else. If this became public, Sophie's life would change forever. Children can be unbelievably cruel. Ryan continued. I already contacted a cybersecurity firm. Whoever sent this knew private details about all 4 of us. So this wasn't random. No. He lowered his voice. They've been watching for months. I suddenly remembered Rachel's warning. You're not the first husband who's come looking for answers. What aren't you telling me? Ryan hesitated. There was another woman. I stared at him. What? Before Emily? How many lives have you ruined? He ignored the question. Her husband confronted me 6 months ago. What happened? He threatened me. And? A week later, he disappeared. Silence. I searched his face for signs he was lying. You think he's behind this? I honestly don't know. My phone buzzed. It was Emily. I answered. Daniel! She sounded terrified. Sophie! My blood froze. What about Sophie? The school called. What happened? Someone tried to pick her up. I was already running. The drive felt endless. Every red light became my enemy. When I reached the school, 2 police officers stood outside the office. Sophie sat inside, wrapped in a blanket, frightened but unharmed. The principal explained everything. A man claiming to be my cousin had arrived with fake identification and tried to sign Sophie out early. Fortunately, Sophie refused to leave. My daddy never sends strangers, she had told the staff. The officers believed it had been an attempted abduction. Emily arrived seconds later. Without thinking, we both ran to Sophie and hugged her at the same time. For one brief moment, none of the betrayal mattered. She was safe. That was enough. A detective approached us. We'll investigate every possibility. I showed him the blackmail letter. His expression became serious immediately. You should have brought this to us sooner. I only received it today. He placed the documents into an evidence bag. I think your family is dealing with something much bigger than an affair. That evening, after Sophie finally fell asleep between us on the living room couch, Emily quietly whispered, Daniel, whoever's behind this isn't finished. I looked toward the apartment window. Across the street, inside a parked black SUV, someone was sitting behind the steering wheel. The engine was running, and the driver was watching our building. The black SUV disappeared before the police could reach our street. By the time officers arrived, only the fading sound of an engine remained. The detective, Michael Torres, stood beside the curb with his notebook in hand. Did either of you recognize the driver? Emily and I shook our heads. No license plate? He asked. It was too dark, I replied. He sighed. Then from this moment on, neither of you should be alone, especially not Sophie. Those words changed everything. For the next few days, Emily moved back into the apartment, not as my wife, but as Sophie's mother. We barely spoke unless it concerned our daughter. The silence between us was painful. One evening, Sophie looked at us over dinner. Are you 2 friends again? Emily forced a smile. We're trying. Sophie nodded happily. I like trying. The innocence in her voice nearly broke me. The following morning, Detective Torres called. We found something. Within an hour, we were downtown. On the conference table lay several enlarged surveillance photos. One showed the black SUV. Another showed the man stepping out of it. My heart stopped. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't anyone I knew. The detective pointed to another picture. This man rented storage units under 3 different names. He slid over another folder. Inside were hundreds of printed photographs. Emily entering her office. Me leaving work. Rachel walking her dog. Ryan meeting clients. Even Sophie playing in the schoolyard. Someone had spent months documenting our lives. Emily covered her mouth. Oh my God. Torres nodded. This isn't ordinary blackmail. So what is it? I asked. We think someone has been building a psychological campaign. What does that even mean? They wanted you frightened before demanding money. I felt sick. Then another detective entered the room carrying a laptop. We traced one encrypted payment request. Everyone leaned closer. It originated from Brooklyn? Torres immediately organized a search warrant. Emily looked at me. Should we go home? I shook my head. I don't think home is safe anymore. That afternoon, Sophie stayed with my sister in Queens, while Emily and I accompanied detectives to the warehouse. Inside were rows of abandoned storage units. The final door opened slowly. At first, it looked empty. Then, I noticed the wall. Covered from floor to ceiling were photographs of us. Thousands of them. Every birthday. Every holiday. Family walks. School events. Restaurant dinners. Someone had followed us for years. Emily began crying uncontrollably. Near the center of the wall hung one photograph larger than the rest. It showed me proposing to Emily in Central Park 12 years earlier. Across it, someone had written in red marker, "Nothing beautiful lasts forever." Detective Torres immediately ordered everyone out. Minutes later, forensic investigators flooded the building. While waiting outside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A calm voice spoke. You found my gallery. Who are you? You've been asking the wrong question. What do you want? I don't want money anymore. My stomach tightened. Then what? I want the truth. The call disconnected. Torres requested the phone immediately. Technicians traced the signal. Disposable phone. Already destroyed. That evening, Ryan called me. I heard about the warehouse. How? The detective contacted Rachel. His voice sounded different, almost frightened. There was something else inside. What? A notebook. No one told me. They didn't tell you because your name was written inside. My pulse quickened. What did it say? Ryan hesitated. It listed dates. What dates? The days people were supposed to disappear. Silence filled the line. My name was first. Who's next? He whispered. According to the notebook. It's yours. I froze. Before I could answer, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. Emily screamed. I ran toward the living room window. Someone had thrown a brick through the glass. Wrapped around it was another handwritten note. I unfolded it with trembling hands. It contained only one sentence. You should have let the past stay buried. I looked at Emily. Neither of us understood what past the message was talking about. But somewhere in New York, someone believed we already knew the answer. For 3 days after the brick came through our window, Emily and I did not sleep in our own apartment. Detective Torres arranged temporary protection, and my sister offered us the guest room in Queens. Sophie thought it was an unexpected family sleepover. Emily and I allowed her to believe that, because some lies are not meant to hide betrayal. Some lies are meant to protect a child from fear she is too young to carry. But every night after Sophie fell asleep, Emily and I sat in my sister's small kitchen under the yellow light above the table, waiting for the next call. The note kept replaying in my mind. You should have let the past stay buried. The past. Whose past? Mine? Emily's? Ryan's? At first, I thought it had to be connected to the affair. Maybe one of Ryan's other victims. Maybe Rachel. Maybe some jealous husband whose life had collapsed months before ours did. But Detective Torres believed something else. "This is bigger than romantic revenge," he told us the next morning at the precinct. "The person behind this has been collecting information for years. They are patient, organized, angry, and they believe they are punishing people for something." Emily sat beside me, pale and silent. "Punishing us for what?" she asked. Torres opened a folder and placed several photographs on the table. One showed our wedding day. Another showed Sophie as a toddler in Central Park. Another showed Emily leaving her office years before she had ever met Ryan. Then he placed down the final photograph. It was of me. I was standing outside a courthouse in Lower Manhattan 9 years earlier. My stomach tightened. Emily turned to me. "Daniel, what is that?" I stared at the picture. I remembered that day. I had been called to testify in a financial fraud case involving one of my former clients, a real estate developer named Charles Whitman. I had discovered irregular transfers in his investment accounts and reported them to federal investigators. Whitman was eventually convicted. He lost his company, his fortune, and his reputation. "I know why someone might hate me," I whispered. Detective Torres leaned forward. "Tell us everything." So I did. 9 years earlier, before Sophie was born, I worked for a boutique financial firm that handled wealthy clients across New York. One of them was Charles Whitman, a man with expensive suits, political friends, and the kind of smile that made people confuse confidence with honesty. I found hidden transactions tied to shell companies. At first, I thought it was tax evasion. Then I realized it was worse. Investors were being robbed. I reported it. Whitman went to prison. His wife filed for divorce. His teenage son disappeared from public life. I had not thought about that family in years. Detective Torres listened carefully, then exchanged a look with another officer. "What?" I asked. Torres slid a new photo across the table. It showed a man in his late 20s with dark hair, hollow eyes, and a thin scar above his eyebrow. His name is Ethan Whitman, Charles Whitman's son. "He changed his last name 3 years ago," Torres said. "Now he goes by Ethan Vale. He works as a freelance surveillance contractor. Private investigations, corporate espionage, hidden camera work." Emily covered her mouth. "He's been following us?" "We believe so." "But why involve Ryan?" I asked. "Why involve Emily's affair?" Torres looked at me with tired eyes. "Because he didn't just want to hurt you. He wanted to make your whole life look as broken as his." The room went silent. That was when I finally understood. This was never only about money. This was revenge dressed as justice. Ethan had watched us for years, waiting for weakness, waiting for a crack. And when Emily gave him one, he widened it until our whole family nearly collapsed. I should have felt angry at him. Instead, I felt something colder. Fear. Because a man patient enough to stalk a family for years was not going to stop because police knew his name. That night, Detective Torres placed officers outside my sister's building. Emily and I slept in separate rooms. At least, we tried to. Around 2 a.m., I heard quiet crying from the hallway. I opened the door and found Emily sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. For a moment, I almost walked away. Then she looked up at me, and all the anger in my chest softened just enough for pity to get through. "I keep thinking this is my fault," she whispered. I leaned against the wall opposite her. "The affair was your fault." She closed her eyes as if the words struck her. "But Ethan? The stalking? Sophie almost being taken? No, that was not your fault." Tears slipped down her face. I gave him the weapon. I did not answer, because part of me believed the same thing. She wiped her cheeks. "I know you hate me. I don't hate you." That surprised both of us. I looked toward the room where Sophie was sleeping. "I hate what you did. I hate that you lied. I hate that you gave your heart to someone else while I was still standing beside you. But I don't hate you, Emily." She broke down completely then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, exhausted collapse. "I wanted to feel seen," she said, "and I know how pathetic that sounds." I said nothing. Ryan noticed everything. My clothes, my ideas, my frustration, my loneliness. He made me feel like someone exciting again, and I let that feeling become more important than my vows. She looked at me, but none of that excuses what I did. For the first time since I found the messages, she did not ask for forgiveness. She did not explain herself as if explanation could become innocence. She simply told the truth. That mattered. Not enough to heal us, but enough to make me listen. The next morning, Detective Torres called. They had found Ethan's apartment in Brooklyn. By the time officers arrived, he was gone, but he had left something behind. A single video file on a laptop. Torres brought us into a private room at the precinct before playing it. Ethan appeared on screen, seated in front of a wall covered in photographs. Our photographs. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Daniel Carter," he said, "you destroyed my father." I felt Emily's hand tense beside mine. Ethan continued, "You told yourself you did the right thing. You wore your honesty like a medal. But do you know what happened after you testified? My mother drank herself to sleep every night. My father died in prison. I lost my name, my home, and my future. So I decided to study yours." He smiled faintly. "And do you know what I found? You were not perfect either. Your wife was lonely. Your marriage was weak. Your beautiful family was just another lie waiting to be exposed." The video cut to clips of Emily and Ryan. Hotel entrances. Restaurants. Street corners. My stomach twisted. Then Ethan leaned closer to the camera. "I don't want your money anymore. I want you to understand how easy it is to lose everything." The screen went black. Then one final line appeared in white text. "Central Park. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. Come alone, or the whole world sees everything." Emily immediately stood. "No." Detective Torres paused the video. "This is an active threat. You are not going alone." "But he asked for me," I said. "That's exactly why you won't go alone." The next day, Central Park was full of ordinary life. Joggers, tourists, children with balloons, couples posing for wedding photographs. It felt obscene that terror could hide inside such beauty. I walked toward the Bethesda Terrace, wearing a concealed police transmitter. Detective Torres and his team were hidden nearby. Emily had refused to stay behind completely. She waited with Rachel in an unmarked police car several blocks away. Ryan was there too, but I had no desire to see him. At 5:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Keep walking," Ethan said. I obeyed. "Do you see how easy this is?" he asked. "One message, and your whole body follows." "Why are you doing this, Ethan?" "Because men like you destroy families and call it justice. Your father destroyed his own life." Silence. Then his voice hardened. "My father made mistakes. He stole from people. You think your wife is better?" The words hit where he meant them to. I stopped walking. "No," I said, "but unlike you, she knows what she did." A bitter laugh came through the phone. "Does she? Or is she only sorry because she was caught?" I had asked myself that question 1,000 times, but in that moment, I realized Ethan did not really care about Emily's remorse. He cared about keeping pain alive. "You can release the videos," I said. The line went quiet. "What?" "You can send them to everyone. My job, her company, the news, the school parents, whoever you want." I looked across the park at the fading orange light between the trees. "But you won't own me with shame." For the first time, Ethan did not respond. I continued. "My wife betrayed me. Ryan betrayed Rachel. People failed each other. But that doesn't make you a judge. It makes you another man using pain as an excuse to hurt people. A sharp sound came from behind me. Footsteps. I turned. Ethan stood 20 feet away, wearing a gray coat and holding a phone in one hand. He looked younger than I expected, and more broken. You think one speech makes you brave? No, I said. I think choosing not to become like you makes me free. His face twisted with anger. He raised the phone. Then watch your life burn. Before he could press send, Emily's voice rang out behind him. Ethan, stop! He spun around. Emily had left the police car. My heart nearly stopped. What are you doing? I shouted. She ignored me and stepped closer to Ethan, hands raised. You don't want justice, she said. You want someone to feel as ruined as you do. Ethan laughed. You gave me everything I needed. Yes, Emily said, tears in her eyes. I did. I broke my marriage. I hurt my husband. I hurt my daughter. I hurt myself. But I will not let my worst mistake become your excuse to destroy my child. For 1 second, Ethan's expression changed. Then sirens erupted. Detective Torres and his team moved in. Ethan panicked. He shoved Emily aside and ran toward the stairs. I ran after him without thinking. He was fast, but fear made him careless. Near the edge of the terrace, he slipped on wet stone and crashed hard against the railing. His phone skidded across the pavement toward the fountain. I grabbed it before he could reach it. Police tackled him seconds later. Ethan screamed my name as officers handcuffed him. This isn't over. Detective Torres took the phone from my hand. Actually, he said, it is. Emily was sitting on the ground nearby, shaken but unharmed. I rushed to her. For a moment, all I saw was the woman who had shattered my trust. Then I saw Sophie's mother. Then I saw the terrified human being who had stepped between danger and our family. Because, despite everything, she still loved us. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded through tears. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. I helped her stand. This time, I did not pull away when she leaned against me. That did not mean we were healed. It did not mean we were fixed. But as police lights flashed across the stone and Ethan Whitman disappeared into the back of a patrol car, I felt something loosen inside my chest. The nightmare was ending. And for the first time since the night I saw Ryan's messages on Emily's iPad, I wondered if maybe endings were not always the same thing as destruction. Sometimes, maybe, an ending was only the painful beginning of something honest. 6 months passed before life began to resemble something ordinary again. Ethan Whitman pleaded guilty to multiple counts of stalking, attempted kidnapping, blackmail, extortion, and unlawful surveillance. Investigators discovered he had secretly documented dozens of families over the years. Some had survived, others had not. Detective Michael Torres later told me that our case had helped uncover an entire network of victims who had been too ashamed to come forward. For the first time in a long time, I felt that something good had come from all the pain. Emily and I continued living separately, not because we hated each other anymore, because rebuilding trust required honesty, not shortcuts. Every Wednesday evening, we attended counseling together. Not marriage counseling at first, co-parenting counseling. We learned how to speak without blaming each other. We learned how to listen instead of preparing our next argument. Most importantly, we learned how much of our marriage had been built on assumptions instead of conversations. One evening, our therapist asked a simple question. When was the last time either of you truly saw the other? Neither of us answered. The silence itself became the answer. I realized I had spent years believing providing for my family was the same thing as being emotionally present. Emily admitted she had hidden her loneliness instead of sharing it because she feared disappointing me. Instead of asking for help, She accepted attention from someone who made empty promises sound like hope. None of those truths excuse the affair. But understanding why something happened is different from pretending it never happened. Sophie became the reason we kept showing up. She never asked complicated questions. She only wanted to know whether Mommy and Daddy would watch her school play together. So we did. She wanted both of us at her soccer games, so we stood on the same sideline. She wanted family movie nights. At first, we took turns. Eventually, we sat on the same couch again. Slowly, something unexpected happened. The conversation stopped feeling forced. Emily laughed at one of my terrible jokes and covered her mouth in surprise, as if she had forgotten what it sounded like. I caught myself smiling back. Neither of us mentioned it. Healing rarely announces itself. It simply arrives one ordinary moment at a time. One Saturday morning, Emily invited me for coffee. The place was the same cafe where we had celebrated our first anniversary. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "I know I can't erase what I did." "You can't." "I know." She looked down at the table. "If we never become husband and wife again, I'll accept that. But I don't want fear to decide the rest of our lives." I looked at the woman sitting across from me. She was no longer trying to defend herself. She was no longer asking me to forget. She was simply choosing honesty. For the first time, I believed it. Months later, after nearly a year of counseling, long conversations, tears, setbacks, and tiny victories, I asked Emily to meet me in Central Park. She looked confused when she arrived. "Why here?" I smiled. "You'll see." We walked until we reached the exact place where I had proposed 12 years earlier. The same trees, the same path, the same bench. Only we were different. "Sophie helped me plan this," I said. Emily looked around. Our daughter stepped out from behind a nearby tree, holding a small wooden box. "Daddy said I have an important job," she said proudly. Emily knelt and hugged her. Sophie handed her the box. Inside was Emily's original wedding ring. I had kept it in a drawer ever since the night she left our apartment. Emily looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "I don't deserve this." "No," I answered honestly. "You don't." She lowered her head. "But forgiveness isn't something people earn." She looked back at me. "It's something people choose." I took a deep breath. I will never forget what happened. I know. There will still be difficult days. I know. There will be moments when trust feels fragile. I'll spend the rest of my life protecting it. I believed her. Not because she promised, because for an entire year she had proven it. I slipped the ring onto her finger. This time it represented something very different. Not perfection, commitment, truth, grace. A few weeks later, we held a quiet ceremony in a small chapel outside New York. There were fewer than 20 guests. No luxury decorations. No photographers chasing perfect pictures. Detective Torres attended with his wife. Rachel came too. She smiled warmly as she hugged Emily. "I finally forgave you," Rachel whispered. Emily cried harder than she had during the ceremony. Ryan was not invited. Months earlier, he had written both of us long letters accepting full responsibility for everything he had done. He never asked for forgiveness. He simply apologized and disappeared from our lives. I respected that. Some endings do not require another conversation. They require distance. Life slowly became wonderfully ordinary. Saturday pancakes, school projects, arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash, family walks through Manhattan. The ordinary moments I once took for granted became the greatest gifts I had ever received. On the second anniversary of Ethan's arrest, Sophie asked us a question while we watched the sunset over the Hudson River. "Were you ever scared I wouldn't have my family anymore?" Emily and I looked at each other. Then I answered. "Every single day." Sophie wrapped her arms around both of us. "I'm glad you stayed." So was I. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, Emily and I stood on our apartment balcony overlooking the lights of New York City. The skyline looked exactly the way it had on the night I discovered her affair. The taxis still rushed through the streets. The city still hummed with life. Everything outside was the same. The difference was inside us. Pain had taught us honesty. Loss had taught us gratitude. Forgiveness had taught us strength. As I held Emily's hand, I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Trust can be broken in a single moment. Rebuilding it takes thousands of small choices. We chose each other again. Not because our story had been perfect, but because after facing the worst of ourselves, we finally learned how to become the people our daughter had believed we were all along. And as we walked back inside together, I knew our future would never be defined by the night everything fell apart. It would be defined by every day we chose to rebuild. The end.